Good morning. Thank you for joining me in this AusCERT presentation. I need to record this in stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne, but I hope you enjoy the weather in Queensland. I will talk about purple team exercises with you today. My name is Fatih Ozavci, and I work for cybersecurity more than 2 decades, and I focus on adversary simulations and tradecraft research for the last 5 years. I study also Master of Cybersecurity in University of New South Wales. I have released some vulnerabilities for major vendors, also published them in major security conferences in Black Hat USA, DEF CON, and AusCERT. Today, I will talk about the threat actors and what is Purple Team first, and then I will explain the adversary simulation types and the stages of Purple Team exercises, how we design them, how we develop them, and of course, running and as well as getting the benefits. First of all, the threat actors. Threat actors have different motives. Some try to steal some data for cyber espionage, but also try to get more state-level benefits, such as targeting the critical infrastructure. On the other hand, there are some ransomware gangs try to compromise a certain organization, encrypt the data, or try to steal the data and start an extortion. They have different motives, and this may reflect to their campaigns. Ransomware attacks need only a short term, such as 1 week to 1 month, but state-sponsored attacks targeting critical infrastructure or a financial attack targeting the SWIFT environment will take up to 6 months or maybe a year. Adversary simulations are the only tool helping organizations to understand the threat actors, because the other tools are defensive tools. They try to defend the perimeter. Adversary simulations help organizations to understand the threat actors and stimulate those behaviors to understand and assess their investments, perimeter controls. Red Team is one of those. Red Team is threat intelligence-based cyber attack simulation, and generally is one-to-one map of the threat actor, and sometimes also encouraged by the regulations such as CBEST, CORI, or ICAST exercises. There are also some commercial or open source solutions for automated adversary simulations. And they are actually using the Mitre attack map to utilize their techniques in a certain software. We will focus on the purple team exercises today. It is a mix of both, but also including the blue teams for more beneficial scenarios. First of all, we need to understand what exactly we try to simulate. The first one is the threat actor, that is correct. But is there any other regulation requirements? If so, what are they? Maybe multiple threat actors should run at the same time. Or we need to focus on some security breach we experienced, or we need to focus on the external red team exercise we received. So we need to understand why we exactly do this. Then we can just tailor fit this, cut some corners, and we can just work on it. Some threat actors also target organizations in real life, and they do this day by day. If the organization is under attack by some certain threat actors, the purple team can focus on those threat actors and their behaviors based on threat intelligence data, of course, some ransomware gangs or long-term access. Mitre attack is a common language for all these communications. And that's why probably you are not comfortable to see this map every time someone shows you, but this is the common language. And this is what we will use in this presentation as well. Some essential decisions must be taken before designing this purple team exercise. You need to understand which one is beneficial, informing the blue teams or not. Some exercises must be informed to get more participation, collaboration, and benefits. But sometimes you may need to see the blue team in their real life, their nature, actually. There's also some external offensive teams performing this type of exercises. They have really good coverage. However, they may not understand the organizational needs or the resources, servers, or controls implemented in an organization. That's why large organizations should also utilize their internal offensive teams to run the purple team exercises. And there are different types of purple team exercises. The first one is the scenario automation. In this exercise, a certain scenario runs for a short time to understand the controls. There's also capture the flag, which is a sort of race. So red team versus blue team race, they try to capture more flags. If attacks or actions are not detected, it counts to red, or if detected or prevented, blue team wins. That's the thing. However, there are also capture the flag exercises to understand the capability requirements, but also allowing the other blue team members to run for it, such as threat intelligence, cyber response, detections and orchestration teams, and more. A swim bridge scenario, on the other hand, is slightly different. It is a certain threat actor scenario, but it comes with an assumption. What if the threat actor has access to our cloud service? What if the threat actor also has user credentials and laptop? And the question is, what's next? The exercise is designed on this question. Teams can be constructed using multiple teams in the organization, such as blue team would have members from threat intelligence, cyber response, security awareness, or operation teams. On the other hand, red team may have red team offensive security or penetration testing members, because different skills will be required. But you need to also change these teams or just use members in cross teams to train them better. In a purple team exercise, we need a lot of things that include some technical requirements as well as business. But we need to understand, do we need the threat intelligence data? If so, what threat actors would be simulated? There may be some multiple simulations, such as one certain threat actor, one threat actor for ransomware, and a custom threat actor to understand our controls better. It's really up to the organization's needs. Technical requirements are simply the accounts, credentials, servers. But business requirements are more like safeguards. They are change requests, approvals, or resource allocations. This helps us to understand the organization better, as well as making this beneficial for everyone. In a ransomware scenario, we need to focus on a few stages to get more benefits. For example, users can be targeted using phishing attempts. But phishing campaigns are not only phishing campaigns, they actually assess the security controls implemented for mail gateways or attachments or maybe domains or something like that. We have some additional controls there. So phishing campaigns actually target those security controls. They are not sending email to test the user. Of course, security awareness and user awareness is something good, and it is there, but we are not only targeting that one. If the spear phishing is link-based, proxy controls are also tested, such as downloading a certain file or visiting a certain domain. They are also there as a threat, and we need to understand our proxy controls as well as our secure internet use. When a user gets compromised, we have the endpoint, the laptop or system. That means we can also test the other components, such as in our EDRs, our vulnerability and patch management protocols and controls implemented. And in addition, we have command and control system is here, and we can see that that control works or not, because command and control implementation is required to drive the implant installed on the client. And if there is no sufficient detection here, it's also passing through. In endpoint activities, we simply perform initial compromise, defense evasion, situational awareness, privilege escalation, exploiting some certain vulnerabilities. All those controls are simply tested. And after that, we simply start encryption. But before that, of course, we need to stop the backup protocols, volume shadow copy, and something like that. Then we need to remove all those backups and copies, then start encrypting the data, then leave a message. This will also test the cyber response as well as the data backups procedure. If we change the scenario to the supply chain attacks will have an implication on our initial compromise. For example, the supply chain attacks start with hardware additions, compromised server, compromised laptop, a USB device compromised, or something like that, or a software compromised, such as a Docker software, a certain Docker container, or a certain desktop software compromised because of the vendor. These type of scenarios can be also implemented, and they actually test our other security controls, such as physical access, software and inventory management, or hardware monitoring for the malicious devices. Endpoint assessments are slightly similar, so we can exactly see that they are almost same with the ransomware. But we need to also perform a simple lateral movement for the server-side access. The lateral movement section also starts additional attacks, such as reusing the credentials, running some code through WMI, PSXDEC, or PowerShell services, or remote services as well. And after that, exfiltrating some data with DLP flags. In this case, cyber response, as well as some lateral movement detection, will be tested. But data exfiltration with DLP flags will also test data protection services. So we can see that they are efficient or not. If we go to the assembly scenario, we can start a certain point, and that certain point will be cloud or endpoint. In this example, this endpoint, to make this slightly simple, but you can start from a cloud service as well, a compromised Docker container, and let's move on there. Escape from Docker, elevate privileges, and then working on Kubernetes and compromising cloud and establishing a kind of pivot hole to the organization. That's really great implementation. But also, if endpoint and server scenario is valid, we can still test the lateral movement features. Whenever we land to the servers, we have also some actions on objectives, because most of the threat actors also chase some sort of benefits, such as financial gain, or maybe a certain data for cyber espionage. In this example, we focus on the financial data. That's why we focus on some servers responsible of financial operations. This helps us to understand the financial controls or fraud controls as well during the exercise. Some data manipulation, fraud attempts, creating a transfer or approving transfer will help us to understand if a threat actor generates a certain transfer or approves it, or what control will work, and try to avoid it. Scenario automation is also possible. Since 2016, there are automated adversary emulations research in the wild. Mitre is the leader here, and I added some papers in this presentation, references. So 4 different papers from Mitre and 2 independent researchers are attached to this presentation if you're interested in it. Because automation will have different implementations, and they have actually some consequences as well. You may not cover the threat actor efficiently, but it is slightly easier to implement. Mitre attack can be implemented, but you need to understand what techniques are used by those threat actors. That's why Mitre Attack Navigator tool helps you to understand what techniques are used by those threat actors. So you can use this tool to understand what techniques must be in scope for your purple team exercise. When the platform stage comes, you need to understand your environment. And then you need to understand which type of deployment is suitable to your environment. It is mostly cloud, but of course, the provider is a kind of decision point for you. If you are testing the Office 365, you may need to go a kind of Office 365 tenancy. Or if you are focusing on only organization from over internet only, you can use Azure or DigitalOcean easily. What you will do is simply installing the servers on a cloud service, but also protecting them, making them look legitimate. That's why domain fronting will be used. Additional aged or expired domains can be registered for this exercise. You can classify the domains to make this environment legitimate. At least it should look legitimate. Operational security is also important. We need to protect this environment because we will use this for this production exercise, real-time monitoring, encrypting everything, and of course, implementing some compliance requirements. Command and control is the key software here because we will derive the influence on the organization using the command and control services. If we simulate a certain threat actor, we can align our command and control selection with that threat actor. Otherwise, we need to focus on our objectives. If we need long-term objectives to complete, we can focus on long-term access C2s, such as keeping the C2 alive for 4 months and using a kind of low beaconing, 1 beacon per day, just checking that it is running or not. But interactive beaconing will require real-time communication, such as taking screenshots using VNC or remote desktop. We need to install multiple C2s for these purposes. And choosing the right C2 is important. Sometimes protocols, sometimes being cloud native will be decision point. Safer C2 choices for us are CobaltStrike, Covenant, and Silent Trinity. CobaltStrike is also used by threat actors, so it's a kind of common tool. But Covenant and Silent Trinity also give us additional options, such as using .NET Tradecraft and making everything slightly cutting edge and working on everything slightly flexible. If you have concerns about selection and you think that some of those features are not suitable to you, you can always visit C2 Matrix project to understand what C2s are available in the wild and which one is more suitable to you. Scenario automation also requires additional C2s. I will not explain all the details, but Mitre Caldera is one of those, automating the scenarios for you using open source solutions. And TTPs are there, but customization is slightly difficult. Red Canary has POC level implementations. Techniques are implemented individually, and you can combine Caldera and Atomic Red Team at the same time and running Atomic Red Team examples one by one and together in an automation way. Petaq is a purple team command and control server. I developed this for a certain reason, which is I need to add my custom code to a certain reliable application, because CobaltStrike has been acquired recently, or commercial decisions may change and product may get discontinued. And my code will be discontinued if that's the case. To avoid this kind of challenge, I prefer to use my own code set and adding some features to that command and control server. That was the idea behind of Petaq C2. Petaq supports interactive communications such as WebSocket communication, but also nested implant approach and create a star map in the target organization using SMB name pipes, TCP or UDP protocols. It supports .NET assemblies, .NET source code, or just normal process execution, PowerShell through system management automation in .NET, and it's a normal shell code as well. They're using different techniques to inject. And it supports also lateral movement. That means it has a really good coverage for red and purple team simulations. It also supports scenario-based TTP approach, and this feature added recently. The website has some examples, and today I will also show you briefly how it works. Software is not limited with the command and control. There are some additional software suites or tools you need to use, such as phishing environment, using GoFish or maybe EvilJinx as a kind of proxy or phishing management environment to understand how it works, and then collecting all these statistics and share with the teams. Initial access, privilege escalation, evasion, awareness, they also need additional tools. Some of those are slightly old, but they are still useful. Unicorn, Sharpshooter, or GhostPack can be used for this kind of activities. AD is another one. Active Directory tools will be also necessary for some certain exercise types. Ping Castle will discover the vulnerabilities, Bloodhound will reveal the infrastructure issues, and Rubius and KQ will help you to perform Kerberos attacks. For lateral movement perspective, you can use multiple protocols, and there are some tools to perform this easily as well. And you can use native cloud services. Operational security is also quite important, because the operation itself must be secure. You exfiltrate some data, you share your own code, and this code can be submitted to VirusTotal. This kind of activities should be monitored. RedELK is a response to this type of activities. It's an open source application. It simply collects the C2 logs, proxy logs, or IOCs, and it also monitors these IOCs in different commercial or open source feeds. So simply, if you send an implant, And blue team members upload this to VirusTotal to check the implant. You can see this, and you can say that, okay, blue team has taken this action. Or if blue team tries to test your implant in a certain sandbox, you can also monitor this activity as well. It gives you more blue team telemetry, as well as understand the unwanted victims or potential security breach in this environment. Planting flags also help you to understand the individual team capabilities. So the individuals, such as reverse engineers or network specialists, can be tested using the flags. And you can assign those flags to certain groups or certain people to understand that, do they have that capability? If so, how? For example, initiating the malware and deploying it using multiple stages. So it's executing a command. It could be a PowerShell command as a flag, and a dropper, for example, a kind of .NET application, and this can be disassembled easily using a decompiler for .NET, and a flag can be in the source code. And .NET application can invoke a certain shell code, for example, the first stage of COBOL strike, and that shell code will be downloaded, and that shell code may have a flag, and the second stage will have a different flag. So you can test the PowerShell encoding, decoding capabilities, or .NET reverse engineering capabilities, or native shellcode or binary reverse engineering capabilities there. So you can flag everything which would be useful for your individual capability assessment. But you need to also monitor this using a capture the flag monitoring system. The exercise should run under some certain rules as well. Of course, the scenario will be done in 1 or 2 minutes, maybe even an hour. But blue team will not see this in that time manner. They will see this with some delay, maybe a day or a few hours. So you need to give that grace period to them. So if you split the scenario, for example, initial compromise and endpoint activities and lateral movement activities and actions on objective activities, you can perform this exercise in 3 days, performing all the attacks in morning and allowing the blue team to get telemetry for the rest of the day. That would be an approach. There must be an orchestrator as well as a manager assigned to these activities to understand what teams do what. Moreover, this orchestrator should start a kind of real-time communication between the teams and monitor their behaviors and constructive feedback to each other as well. This is a friendly competition, and everybody is trying to raise the bar against the threat actor. But it is, of course, a kind of real-life activity, so the pressure must be still there. It's not a game. We are actually simulating a threat actor in their real components. Blue team also need to receive almost all these tradecraft, IOCs, and logs, because if you miss something, you need to improve this, right? All these gaps can be only fixed using those raw output. And Vector can help you to keep those metrics as well as supporting features in a certain application. Vector is also an open source application, and it manages the TTP details. It has Mitre ATT&ck implementation and supporting its back, as well as red and blue team tradecraft nodes. So if you see a flag as blue teamer, you can register it there. If a red team describes the certain actions or certain scenario components, they can add there as well. In the end, you can just compare the results and actually what attack detected, what attack prevented, or who was most beneficial in that case, or who was the most impressive reverse engineer. Uplifting game is also important because the exercise itself is, of course, highly complicated, and you can start with a smaller exercise, which is great still. However, the threat actors uplift their game always. So you need to uplift your own game. You need to improve your purple team exercises using different purple team C2s, using different C2 traffic types, using cloud services, maybe starting from the cloud instead of targeting detections, adding new HTTP, HTTPS protocols such as HTTP 2.3 for push notifications. Or you can improve some evasive techniques, for example, ETW bypasses or EDR bypasses, or just kernel driver compromise to disable EDRs. Also, you can change the pace of the exercise. Of course, 2-3 days would be good for everyone. What if you use an exercise for, let's say, more than 2 months, 3 months? such as blockchain miners, or spreading malware in the organization and waiting SOC or cyber response to find this. They are also important. In this demo, I will try to show you the automation features of Petaq and how we can use the scenario approach using Petaq. Petaq has a scenario feature recently added, and this scenario feature is simply JSON files. JSON files have actual commands that also run on Petaq. If you wonder that what is Petaq and how you can interactively use it, Petaq's website already has a video for 1 hour training. So you can just go to that one and take the brief information as well as training, which is fine. In this demo, I focused on the scenarios. A scenario file only has this information, threat actor and TTP IDs. TTP IDs actually file names for this content. Each TTP is separated. It is saved under scenarios and TTPs folder. And TTPs have Mitre ID, a user-friendly description, and instruction. That's it. It's quite small and also quite easy to understand. For instruction perspective, we have certain instruction types. Attack supports executing process or uploading file, downloading a file, linking an implant to implant, or sleeping. That will help you to adjust the pace of the exercise. Or some .NET capabilities, such as running some .NET assemblies in memory, compiling the source code of .NET in memory, or providing .NET to you as a kind of command shell, okay? You can just give your single liner .NET code, and it will compile this in memory and run. But also supports some PowerShell in system management automation that helps you to test some additional IOCs. It supports some shellcode injection techniques as well as some lateral movement techniques. With this combination, you can actually use the real tradecraft such as PowerUp, Mimikatz, Seatbelt, SharpMove, or other WMI or PSExec protocols. You can exactly simulate the threat actor with their own tools. That's also possible. Mimikatz, of course, Mimikatz is there. Or PowerUp can be used. I don't need to integrate those because Petaq has a baseline for all of those. So the simple command can be exec, but this is .NET example for Seatbelt. Seatbelt application is a .NET application, and you can use exec sharp assembly, and then file, and file path, and the parameters to run a .NET assembly. Also, .NET code can be compiled in memory, and you can use this as a kind of shell for yourself. For example, exec sharp direct, get hostname. It will be compiled, run, and give the code to you. Compiling .NET source, giving a certain source code in the wild as a file or through a kind of web service, and running using some commands. In this case, shellcode invoke injects some certain shellcode and runs it using a certain actual technique, QUser APC. But this shellcode invoke has also an embedded shellcode that can be called using demo. Windows management instrumentation can be also used for lateral movement, and Petaq has it. This is also helpful for all of us because WMI is slightly less monitored, and we can use this for lateral movement. But of course, you can add here as the Windows tools such as exec, then WMIC or SC or some other tools. They can be also used for lateral movement. When you link an implant to implant, you can use always link command like that. TCP, UDP, or SMB name pipes can be used for this. This practical demo, I have a screen for you. Top left is Windows 10 with the victim itself running 2 implants, as you can see in bottom screen on the Petaq service. And top right, there's also AD as well as an exchange. I will run a simple command through an implant. If I run, for example, exec calc, it will run the calculator. So we can use exec for anything, exec cmd/c and the command itself, or exec PowerShell and the PowerShell command. It will be fine. This is a PowerShell example, write output, username, and username is Att&ck. I'm currently working on one single implant. If I need to go back, I can use back, and I can go back to the interactive screen and main screen, or this example is Sharp Direct. I will go back to main screen, and I will talk about the scenarios, and I will show the scenario feature now. This is the list of the implants. Only 2 implants available on the desktop side and no scenarios loaded or run. Scenario command can be used with implant ID and the scenario file I have shown you. The scenario file points to some TTP files. What service does is quite simple. It simply constructs the scenario file using the TTP files. One single file includes all the binaries or source code or something like that as a package, and it sends this to the implant using the C2 channel. Through that, we have visibility on how it would work. First, the logs. Second, the implant also reports this. I'm just showing the implant with debugging features. As you see, some calcs started because of the shell code, some commands did run. We can see these visual activities, but we always can disable the debugging features so the victim will not understand anything. But I don't mind this because Petaq is a purple team C2, so I need the blue team to see the details. When the scenario finished, we receive the scenario report. But there's also something new here. This is implant, a new implant. It wasn't there. So one of our scenario component actually added a new implant, which is Nabu, the exchange server, because it has lateral movement instruction. Scenarios can list the scenarios, and giving the scenario ID would list the scenario activities in a summary. The Mitre attack ID, the user-friendly name, start and stop timestamps. They are useful to understand when the attack started, when it ended, and how did it go. Successful or not. If it is successful, the command did run. We don't know about the output. This should be retrieved through another command. Scenarios, scenario ID, then output. That will list the output for you. So you can see the real-time output here, and you can see how it works. For example, for user list, we can see how it works. Exec CMD net users or groups would list the users, just like this, the instruction. And we can see the users. But if this is not a kind of domain controller, it will fail as well. What Petaq sees is the command executed, not the output successful or not. Output is not a concern. We are trying to actually run this TTP, this tradecraft. This is useful for blue team activities, so they can search their defense tools for those timestamps. I added some combinations here, such as normal commands, PowerShell through the system automation. It also has some additional, for example, .NET tools, loading some .NET assemblies, some source codes. This video will be also online on Petaq's web page, so you can always jump there and see what are the details implemented here, or you can just download Petaq and you can just implement yourself. This is seatbelt output, for example. This is a .NET application. It did run, and this is the real-time output. And also, this is shellcode injector, and finally, of course, memory compile example here as well. All these are here to replicate the threat actor behaviors. And that's why I'm just cutting the demo short here because of the timelines. And now its conclusion. Purple team is quite beneficial exercise. And it is not an offensive exercise only. It is a collaboration. So blue team and red team should work together. And this exercise must be tailor-fit to the organization. Their own adversary, their own people, their own software, and their own risks. Purple team exercises generate some additional output for us. They are our values. The report may include the vulnerabilities, our security control efficiency, skill gaps to be improved. Maybe your best guys are way more than expected, and you can actually reward them if they represent a really good performance there. You can always see the organization performance there as well. You have overall controls, people, and offensive teams, defensive teams. You can see how they work together. But remember that specialists are first, not the software. Specialists drive the software. They design the software. If you have someone to develop those tradecrafts custom, that's great. These are the research I referred in the automated adversary simulation section. These are the references that you can visit or download those tools. Petaq C2 repository will have this presentation video after the talk. Thank you for your time. And this recording is over, but I will take your questions live shortly. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you very much, Fatih, and great to see.
Pleasure.
That's fantastic. Twice fun. So there was a bit of a hiccup around at the start of the vid. So I definitely wanted to kind of introduce Fatih because he's a good friend of mine. I've known him for many years, and in my opinion, probably one of the best red teamers in the country. So we're very fortunate to have him. Fatih, there were a couple of questions which you were kind of answering within the chat, and we do have a few minutes for questions, but one that did come up was, based on red team results, should the purple team decide the controls to implement?
The purple team decision maker, the planning stage decision makers, they are actually the stakeholders, so we can easily change this together. The thing is, we decide on the controls based on the red team observations, but blue team actually adjusts the security controls and make it secure. If the question is based on who will secure this, the answer is blue team. If the question is based on what security controls to be included in scope, yes, that is decision makers and key stakeholders for the purple team. So we are.
Fantastic. And a question from me, based on your extensive experience, how do you find the buy-in at a lot of organizations to have that connection between the red team and the blue team and then creating that purple team? Do you think it's getting better, or is it still a problem?
It is still in the earlier stage for Australia, but it is very common in US and Europe. They have their internal purple teams dedicated for this purpose. They have their own red team for their internal cyber defense to improve the cyber defense for adversary simulations. They have also another red team dedicated to their global operations. So they may have multiple adversary simulation organization units in the same organization. I can easily name a couple of those, such as Microsoft, Amazon, or Facebook. They have multiple stages. In Australia, it is not at that stage. However, APRA and some other financial institution regulations, they require the larger organizations to have a dedicated purple team these days.
That's fantastic. And we're seeing a lot of the threat-driven approach to a lot of the cybersecurity and driving a lot of the red team activity as well overseas, such as the CBEST framework or the ASI one in Singapore. You have ICAST in Hong Kong as well.
Do you in Australia?
Yeah, well, the worst kept secret, right? And you know, the frameworks that are coming into these regions, do you think that they're doing enough as well, or can they do more?
This really depends on a couple of things. The first thing is the organizations need to understand that red team and as well as all adversary simulations, they are hostile, okay? They are not friendly. So people who perform this, even though they are friendly, they will look hostile. This is not easy to integrate to 200 years old organizations, of course. There will be lots of difficulties and hiccups, but the priorities must align with this, and they need to have red teams. They need to have purple teams. They need to have exemptions for those because their traditional controls will not apply to red teams. Otherwise, it won't be a red team. That's the main problem, main challenge for older organizations.
Yeah, thank you. And that's it for question time. But you are around today if people want to ask any kind of questions of you?
Sure. Actually, on chat, I already put a couple of links. I will be in this actually presentation and channel and stream too, as well as I put a LinkedIn comment there for live chat as well as some other questions. The videos, the demo videos are online, as well as PDF, as well as source code already. I didn't share, of course, the video of AusCERT. That's the best published by AusCERT, of course. Yeah, I'm open to any communications, questions, or just chat.
Cool.
Thank you for the opportunity for AusCERT. Actually, it was really fun. This is my first virtual conference speaking.
It's definitely a unique experience. Right, yeah. So thank you so much, Fatih. It was great seeing you again.
Thank you, guys.
And look forward to seeing you in person sometime, hopefully soon.
Sure. Cheers.